wanted to liquidate my childhood Pokemon card collection, and I spent 6 hours going through bins underneath my bed and found years worth of Pokemon cards and brought them all into face-to-face games, and they were incredibly kind and purchased them all for me, despite the dubious condition that some of them were in. So go check out face-to-face games, and I'm joined as always by Liam Kane.
I have a order waiting for pickup, but I won't tell you what it is.
That's unfortunate because I've actually been using this casting opportunity to try to get reads on what Liam and his team will be playing at the World Championships in Seattle this year, but so far I've been unsuccessful. But I'll be working those into the try to catch him when he's slipping and get some reads on standard and avatar draft. But today, thankfully, we are watching some modern, and we're down to only two X and O players in the event, two 7-0s. We have Brett Steele playing Is It Affinity and Eduardo playing Simic Birthing Ritual, a deck that feels like it might be the deck of the tournament. Maybe it's a bit too early to say, but the top tables seem to be full of it.
Yeah, I mean, some of the top players thought that it was the right choice for the meta, and it's been paying off for them. Is It Affinity? I've noticed going up and up in the standings. I mean, that's one that a lot of people could have predicted. It had a solid representation, but we've seen people doing well with it, and this might be the spot where the Simic Ritual deck kind of luck runs out pairing into this affinity deck. Now, Simic Ritual is all about matchups. It's one of the decks that has a higher variance in terms of matchups. And I'm not a Ritual expert, but Affinity looks to be perhaps one of the tougher ones, as they can go wide and go bigger than you can. And you might not, the Simic Ritual deck might not have that much ability to stop it, but we'll see, because Eduardo is going to bring his A game, and that's something that you want to watch.
Yeah, so I'm curious. The for the people watching at home, the points that stick out, like what are we've seen the Simic Ritual do some winning on stream. We watched it win the last round in the hands of Theo. But what do the losing games look like? What are the bad matchups? If you're registering Simic at your LGS or your local event, what are you looking to dodge?
Well, I think first of all, it would be probably Boros Energy. That deck both can interact with you very effectively because you're relying on these cheap creatures going to your end step, but also can outscale you. So decks that outscale you and where one well-timed free counterspell won't be too devastating to them, or decks that are really good at interacting with all your pieces. Affinity definitely can outscale this. Like Affinity as a deck could easily beat an Award Oculus being in play. However, they are quite reliant on that Kappa Cannoneer resolving. And so I think we could see a Simic Ritual having a good chance if they can get a flare at the right moment and then do something powerful afterwards. Otherwise, they're going to get drowned in constructs from Urza Saga, or go wide with the drone tokens with Pinnacle Emissary. The drone tokens being 1/1s makes attacks through the Ice Fangs and the Coiling Oracle quite easily.
Another thing I'd like to look at is this affinity list. It's not, the most boring stock affinity list. It's kind of the natural progression ever since weapons manufacturing broke onto the scene. At the most recent Pro Tour, this is a list that is playing the full 4 copies of it, along with 3 main deck copies of Arcbound Ravager. This is not just using this weapons manufacturing as a plan B that's this Wrath resistant. This is part of the plan A. This is arguably what the deck is built around. That is a lot of slots, right? You're looking at 4 weapons manufacturing, 3 engineered explosives, a clause of Gix, and kind of a blast from the past with the Arcbound Ravagers. So these munitions tokens are really looking to get sacrificed very efficiently.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see, because that angle, like, you don't even need to target the opponent. Like in here, just a few well-timed munitions tokens sacrificed on key creatures will really disrupt the Simic Ritual deck. But being a 4 of a 2-mana enchantment also provides a potential opportunity to get use out of those forced negations. If Affinity is going to play a little slower, hold for their manufacturing, in the right circumstance, that could be a liability. But overall, this version of it looks quite difficult to deal with for it. And so, yeah, I love to see the Arcbound Ravager coming back. That used to be the card that you think of Affinity and you think of Arcbound Ravager, and now it's back, and that makes you feel something.
It really is a work of art, and this is a nice looking deck. It as an affinity deck is, it has 0 cards with the word affinity on them, which is always a good sign. And
No thought cats. Yeah, those are long gone. But we do see Brett mulling to 5 on the draw. So if we're thinking what could a winning start look like for Eduardo, I mean, you have to imagine this is part of it. No turn 1 from Brett. I mean, for in the Affinity deck, no turn 1 doesn't mean you don't have a lot of cheap spells. It just means you're waiting for the manufacturing or for the right setup. But still, you can't be too disappointed if you're Eduardo in this spot.
yeah, it's right in a bad matchup, you'll take anything you can get, and this is something you can get.
Yeah. A Coiling Oracle. That's a new art on the Coiling Oracle. Okay, I added that one to my register.
And Brett is, at turn 1 you can pass with some powerful cards because you're sandbagging for a play, but yeah, once turn 2 happens, you can't pass again. You gotta start slamming something, or else
Yeah.
you're gonna get steamrolled pretty quickly, and
And
that's
if
a
this
powerful
resolves,
card.
Eduardo's in trouble because that Urza Saga that was just played will be able to find on its Chapter 3 Claws of Gix, which allows Brett to sacrifice the munitions tokens that he's sure to create. Um, and so even though this weapons manufacturing, it won't do anything right away, we know that it will do something guaranteed. It's not like Eduardo can counter like the spell that would allow Brett to sacrifice the munitions tokens. The Urza Saga alone does it. And so he does fire off his Force Negation. As we talked about, Force Negation now being a useful spell where usually it is kind of useless against the Affinity deck. Not useless, but much weaker.
Yeah, you're much happier to trade for their 2 mana Haymaker than a Mox Opal or Springleaf Drum. Sometimes you take what you can get, but Eduardo does seem to have kind of a plethora of riches in terms of counterspells. He was tanking a little bit on the decision because he was choosing between Force of Negation
Yeah.
and the uh,
Wow.
Flare of
Boseiju.
Denial.
Boseiju in the draw step on the Urza Saga. Yeah, as he did. Yeah. I sorry, to your point, using the force rather than the flare of denial to keep this 1/1 in play in case he drew. I think if Eduardo had a birthing ritual, he likely would have cast it on that turn. But playing using the force so that in case he does draw a birthing ritual, he can have his strongest start right away. And plus, the force negation is less likely to be good later than a flare of denial will do. So that makes sense also.
Yeah, there's also the angle that the Force of Negation, we talked about it. It's not always hitting the most powerful cards. It's not hitting the Pinnacle Emissary. It's not hitting the Kappa Cannoneer. The Flare of Denial is a catch-all, so it's generally a nice rule of thumb to use your more narrow counterspells first. But that's a second copy, and now the Flare's got to come out of Eduardo's hand.
Yeah, he makes that decision much quicker. Weapons manufacturing to the board, and Brett with a hand of zeros. It's Ornithopter, Memnite, Mishra's Bauble, and Engineered Explosives. So he's going to cycle this Mishra's Bauble and then probably play no cards and just hold them until he draws one of those affinity payoffs that the deck has a lot of, but not so many of them that when you get 2 countered, you just don't always have a third one.
Yeah, and again, these decks are powerful. They close the game quickly, and Brett needs to draw one soon. It's not like Brett has 5 turns to draw a payoff. Brett has maybe 1 or 2 turns before, Eduardo is kind of spinning wheels, but Eduardo can easily draw Birthing Ritual and Oculus or something, and really take this game out of hand.
A powerful turn from Brett. Got a 2/1 haste that's going to trade off with the Coiling Oracle. Not the Coiling Oracle. Is that Ice Fang? Is that Ice Fang?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to see when we're watching, these are the 2 highest placing players right now in the event. They're both 7-0, and they're both just doing, you know, people say Modern is an incredibly powerful format, and I understand why. These are bangers. They're trained. They're 1-1 for the 2-1. None of the cards do anything. It's just a beautiful game, really.
Yeah, but we only get to this spot thanks to the and Eduardo snaps off that block, trying to put as many cards in his graveyard as he possibly can, so that he can go for this Abhorrent Oculus, fanning out 6 cards. So yes, this is 6. Now I manifest Dread, and this is going to be tough for Brett to recover from. I think honestly, if he draws a Kappa here right now, could he cast it? Yes, he would be okay. But I think it was a Urza Saga, and that's going to be probably too slow.
Yeah, you just think you're taking so much damage. You're taking 7 into 9 just off the
Yeah.
Oculus alone, and that's without him hitting anything of relevance or drawing any cards with relevance. You might have to play an Arcbound Ravager, try to size it up into a 3/3 just to be able to block the 2/2 manifest tokens profitably. Like that is not what a winning game looks like for Brett Steele. We talked a lot about going into what does a winning game look like for this Birthing Ritual deck, and I think we're watching one right now.
Yeah, that's true. 1 card. He's up on cards. Arcbound Ravager is resolved. Now his zeros in hand are doing a little bit more. The Ornithopter and the explosives that we talked about before. Equip. Okay. But yeah, definitely the spot is heavily favored to Eduardo, and if he has any sort of powerful follow-up or more interaction, he should be able to take this game.
And this is, one of those games where, yeah, Eduardo a pretty good draw, all the right interaction, Brett Mulligan to 5, but there is some level of, seeing that this Brett Steele is an affinity deck has gone kind of leveraging this weapons manufacturing has made them play, maybe some suboptimal cards in this Arcbound Ravager. If that was a thought cast here, Brett's spot looks a little bit better, but right now it is not look super appealing.
Well, the Ravager is kind of strong. I mean, the Ornithopter almost wants to get into chump block mode anyway. That moves a counter over. Once we get the constructs, and if we can get a Shadow Spear in a few turns, I mean, it's not nothing.
Yeah, it's hard to see exactly how many cards um Eduardo has in hand right now. But
1 card, yeah. He just
okay, 1 card. Yeah, yeah.
1 card, yeah.
I see. And then that's another manifest with a subtlety going to the graveyard, and that's another one of those telling ones where what do you think is the card face down? There ain't many creatures in the deck better than a subtlety. It could be subtlety number 2,
Brett
but
praying that it's an endurance, the 1 endurance main deck. Maybe it's that.
at the end of the day, there's we all kind of know what's going on underneath that, and that looks like 3 mana getting
It is,
tapped.
yeah. Abhorrent Oculus number 2, no attacks, 1 construct being made. This will be extremely difficult to recover from.
If you're Brett, you're thinking this is good. I'm getting all of my bad luck out of the way in this game. I multiply. If my opponent hit the Oculus off the manifest, everything is going as exactly as bad as it could possibly go for me. This is good. Moving it, I can just kind of. As if we end up scrapping this one out, we can go to the next one. But the Shadow Spear is something.
Do you think everything is going bad for me? This is good.
I think you have to succeed in Magic. I think you need to lie to yourself to some degree. I think that is an important part of success in Magic.
Yeah.
And I think, if you can tell yourself statistical fallacies, that's going to help you play a little bit better. Nothing wrong with that. That's the beautiful game.
That's an interesting perspective. Well, Brett still feels like he's in this game. Going to create maybe 2 constructs. If we do get a Shadow Spear down, it's going to be quite large. The Ice Fang having Death Touch, thanks to Eduardo's 3rd Snow Land, means that it will trade off with anything that any big creature that wants to get in, but not without gaining Brett a lot of life. Although he will need to pay 2 to equip, so maybe he doesn't make a construct this turn if he feels he really needs the life right now.
Yeah, I think with being at you have an Ornithopter as your defensive metric, but that doesn't feel very promising. And a Springs in hand as well is not exactly what you're looking for. I think you got to go with the Shadow Spear and Prey, but even then, you still have to trade off with the Ice Fang Kotal.
But
It's not a
Sha-
foolproof plan.
Shadow Spear and no and equip and skip out on a construct.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
that's what I
the
noticed.
force line. You got no choice. This you've got to gain the life here, and even though you're going to trade off with a Kotal, looks like there were two Flare of Denials put in the graveyard off those two manifests, which is at least some level of hope here, but
Yeah,
it's not a lot.
yeah. Well, he'll take anything he can get at this moment. Um, the
At
sync.
least you don't think there's another copy, but looks like Brett's actually at 4 life. That is not yeah, that's not a appealing life total. The Shadow Spear's gotta get some work done.
Yeah, it has a big uphill battle for the Shadow Spear, but it does equip to a Saga 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 trample lifelink. Now 8/8.
Can move the boots over maybe.
Opts not to. Gonna leave it on the Ravager.
Maybe it's nice. You get to just you can move the Shadow Sphere back to the Ravager. Gives you a blocker, like a nice lifelink untapped blocker that
It
forces your
does.
opponent to get in the sky.
Yeah, it does prevent those two manifests from getting in on the next turn if you have that Ravager on lifelink, as he would surely not be profitable to attack a manifest into those.
That's a pretty big attack. That dealt what 8? Eduardo's down to 8, I believe.
Yeah. Oh my. Another Oculus.
Okay.
And a
Okay.
subtlety. Okay.
Sometimes
There
you
we
just want
go.
it more.
Simic Ritual. Wow. Impressive showing there from Eduardo, piloting it well. Got the tough choices in the early turns and then just turn it into dominance with the eyeball later on against Brett Steele's Is Infinity deck.
You got to think, looking at how the post sideboard games play out. Eduardo's got some good cards, pile of Force of Vigors, bunch of disputes. These are things going to help out. But I guess we're shifting gears here to the other feature match. You know, talk a little about what we're seeing here, what decks are going on.
Yeah, really interesting Azorius Blink versus Azorius Control matchup. How many games do you think all the players have tested against these two? But these are decks that we saw mostly pioneered, both of them actually, at Pro Tour Edge of Eternities, and do pretty well in those tournaments. But um, they fell out of favor a little bit since, but both these players are bringing them back, and it's worked out well for both of them so far. The Azorius Blink deck even featuring the new card, Wan Shi Tong, Librarian, a little avatar card already made it into the deck. So yeah, this is a slugfest from these two blue-white decks.
There's some other really nice part of this blue white blink deck where the new card Wan Shi Tong Librarian triggers whenever your opponent shuffles their library, and that has prompted Jonathan to bring 4 copies of Path to Exile in the main deck, a card that really feels like it's from another era, but
Wow.
in
For Path Exile 2025 because of Wan Shi Tong. That is amazing.
4 Path to Exile, 2 Cryogen Relic, a card that I bet you did not expect to see in a round 8 at 6-1 in the Modern Regional Championships. But here we are. This deck is fascinating, and looking at the spot, Jonathan looks to be in a pretty good position. He's got the Felia down. Andrews had to expend a lot of cards, subtletying away a Quantum Riddler, and I see a Wan Shi Tong in hand. There's some flash threats. You've got to be if Jonathan, you've got to be happy with your position.
Yeah, but this control deck is really unlike most traditional control decks. It does main deck 4 copies of Orm's Chant. Now, to note, we're in game 2 here, so I don't know if Orm's Chant is the plan that Andrew wants to stick with against this Azorius Blink deck, but it's a lot more about using specific cards at the right time to lock your opponent out on key turns, and then make up the huge card advantage difference by casting like Days Undoing with Narset or with Teferi in play that are just honestly game-ending plays. So this control deck, it can 2-for-1 itself over and over and over again, and if it assembles the right combination, it's still going to win. It's almost like a combo deck in that way.
Yeah, but some pretty clunky draws. Andrew Kidston's looking at 3 copies of Narset in hand, forced to run one out into a Mystical Dispute, and this Velia is just ticking in 2 damage a turn. Does not blinking anything for any value, but a 2/2 is a 2/2, and that will close out the game eventually.
Instant response to the Wan Chi Tong of the fetch land. Getting a surveil land there. Jonathan must want the creature to be in play. I mean, he probably has a lot of expensive cards in hand, so he wants to start getting this going. And it makes sense against a clunky draw. You just want to get it out and get that kind of lock piece almost, or value piece at the very least, into play right away.
Yeah, speeds the clock up as well, and that's now 4 turn. Look at Jonathan's hand. The Alta Arts are making it difficult to parse what's going on, but can do our best. And there's
Narset
Narset number
number
2 of
2 coming
3.
down. With the Narset in play, Andrew can fetch all he wants. Well, not really. The Wan Chi Tong still gets a counter, and the game is conceded, and it looks like we'll be moving to game 3 over here. No handshake or anything, so assuming that Andrew won game 1. So with
Yeah,
32 minutes left on the clock, we'll get to fight it out all the way till the end, which I know actually brief first 2 games, much more than I would have expected just looking at the deck list. But I guess this is modern. Decks are capable of getting ahead early. It doesn't matter what deck you play. You can get that advantage, and you can like even the slowest deck can get these boards that are just not necessarily boards in the case of a control deck, but I mean, if Andrew established Orm's Chant under Scepter in game 1 or Narset Days Undoing, that could end the game in 5 minutes.
yeah, you get this kind of the dichotomy of games. You get these incredibly long, grindy ones that take 40 minutes, but you just get there's at the end of the day, there's a lot of games where one player's deck does the thing and the other player's deck doesn't, and that can move you on very quickly. It looks like we're going back to the starting match. Brett's giving Eduardo's Decklist a last look, kind of looking and praying that those 3 copies of Force of Vigor are not going to be drawn in any of the post board games.
The more you stare at it, the sometimes just hoping maybe it just goes away, just disappears.
Yeah, you gotta hope so. I'm curious to hear your thoughts here. You're Eduardo. How many mystical disputes are you looking to bring in against this affinity deck? How's that card in the matchup?
I love Mystical Dispute against Affinity. Now, I have to say, against Brett's particular build, it is much weaker. Affinity, Dispute against Affinity is fantastic when their key cards were Kappa, Pinnacle Emissary, and then that was kind of it. But now that Brett has this weapons manufacturing, Arcbound Ravager, I mean, there's definitely going to be games where a Mystical Dispute is in your hand and not doing anything relevant. Whereas when it was Thought Cast or Thought Monitor or, you know, those type of cards, Dispute was just always the best thing you could have. But still, assuming that Brett boards back things like Metallic Rebuke, um, which I assume Brett would board in Metallic Rebuke. Maybe not. I'm not sure. But assume he would, then I think you would want to play as many Mystical Disputes as you can.
Yeah, it seems to fight some of these grindier games. You get another talking about Brett's list. No copies of Thoughtcast does just reduce the number of kind of very efficient targets for that mystical dispute. Looks like Eduardo has a sleeve related emergency and something needs to get swapped out. But it looks like everything is going to be repaired and in good order to continue and move on to game 2 and what could be looking like it might be a relatively sizable upset in terms of matchups. We talked a lot about how poor this looked for the Simic Ritual deck, but things got to only get better after the post board games begin, and Eduardo took the hard one.
Yeah, especially wow, Force of Vigor against weapons manufacturing. And you think Affinity, oh, it's going to destroy all your best artifacts, but really its best targets are the enchantments. It's Urza Saga, it's weapons manufacturing, and that's how Brett started game 1. Turn 2 Urza Saga, turn 3 weapons manufacturing. If he has that hand in game 2, he just can't play it out that way because he will lose immediately if Eduardo has a Force of Vigor.
Yeah, and that changes things. Maybe you need to, lower your reliance on this weapons manufacturing. Like very expensive enchantment is just not an effective way to go against a 3 Force of Vigor. Maybe you have to lean your deck out a bit with a bit more cheap cards. You're not playing against one of these decks that has Wraths, so maybe you just want to go more low to the ground than kind of playing these more expensive enchantments.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to cut the manufacturing against such a creature deck, especially when you talked about the Mystical Dispute thing. Um, and Eduardo does have Gemstone Caverns in his sideboard, and I would imagine that maybe this is a matchup where you would board them in going second, but he doesn't have it this game at the very least.
Yeah, you've got to imagine that in these fast matchups, this is the place to have him. Where being on the draw is so punishing, and getting to kind of steal the play. But Brett is kind of going with another, similar kind of posturing of like that slow turn one into the play a ton of cards turn two.
But this is an Urza Saga hand. It is specifically, and he's sequenced his artifacts in the right way so that the Mox Opal could not get targeted with a potential Force of Vigor, along with the Urza Saga, and prevent a construct. So if Eduardo wants to prevent a construct, he must cast Force of Vigor now, which would only hit a Torpor Orb rather than that Mox Opal. So heads up stuff from Brett Steele. He doesn't have the Kappa, or maybe he does have the Kappa, sorry, but he doesn't have the other thing as a payoff. But this is still a strong draw from him.
And your other thing is you're just looking at Eduardo's hand, and Brett's played around the Force of Vigor well, but it doesn't seem to be there. And these constructs are going to be huge, and it's hard. That's a difficult kind of creature for this Simic Birthing Ritual deck to deal with. They deal with the 1/1s better, as they can kind of block them more effectively in the chump blocking. But these are going to be some big constructs, really, before Eduardo can do anything but develop some sort of mopey 2-drop.
Yeah, Eduardo, he's got the subtlety in hand, praying that Red would actually be relying on one of those creatures to resolve, but it seems to not be the case here. Yeah, Mystical Dispute doing nothing against this start, Subtlety doing nothing against this start. So Brett's made Eduardo's cards really ineffective.
It looks like Eduardo is considering going for a subtlety pitch and then sack to Flare of Denial to take the Mox Opal off the play.
Wow.
That's what it looks like to me.
I mean, it's incredible, but I don't think he could beat a construct.
Yeah, maybe that's the only way to you do that, and you hope that you know, like
Because
that
it's not
you
just
draw
one
better.
construct, it's two. It's two because Brett won't have the mana on turn 3 to make a second construct if his Mox Opal is removed.
Yeah, it seems like Eduardo's probably forced to do it. Maybe gonna go with the
He really
fetch
doesn't want to, based
first.
off of the head
Yeah, the body
reaction.
language.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, you're 3 for 1ing yourself to deal with a 0-drop, but there you go. That's the subtlety, and
Yeah.
this is a, and now what if Brett just has another Mox Opal?
Oh, well, that yeah.
What can you do there? But it doesn't.
Look,
It doesn't look like there is one. I see a
it,
Springleaf Drum, a Fiery Islet, and a. Not sure the
Shadow
third
Spear?
card. Looks like
Shadow
a Shadow
Spear,
Spear.
which is
Yeah.
nothing. So, I mean, you 3 for 1 yourself to deal with a Mox Opal, but you actually invalidated almost Brett's entire hand. So, what a play from Eduardo. He had the after much, mulling and feeling bad about having to make this play, he does pull the trigger, and it's what he needs to do in this spot in order to have a chance.
Yeah, it's a tough play to make. You really, but again, you got to believe in your deck to some capacity. You have all these cards that can draw you more cards. Once one Birthing Ritual in play, and all the kind of card advantage you gave up is sort of out the window, and you just need time. And this 3 for 1 has bought himself that. And now we're thinking, what is Bailey looking to get with this Urza Saga? Choosing not to crack the bauble. That is another effectively blank card with no payoff.
perhaps a Mox Opal that got countered. He can get out here, but he doesn't really need mana.
Maybe second Mishra's Bauble to draw, just to try to cycle into some action.
That's possible, yeah. If he was getting a second Mishra's Bauble, you'd think maybe he would have cracked the first one, but I'm sure he did the count on all his potential draws and thought that, no, I need this this Mishra's Bauble to be in place so that if I draw something like a Cannoneer, I didn't ruin my entire turn. Oh, it's Graph Digger's Cage that he goes for. Okay, well that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it stops a lot, right? Stops the Birthing Ritual. It stops the Oculus from putting the creatures into play, I think, is how that works.
Yes, that's true. And Eduardo just played the Boseiju as a second land, which would have been an answer to it. Now, of course, he probably had to do that because it's his only land. And it looks like we're going to get a judge call about this.
I would guess it's asking about the Birthing Ritual or the Oculus or one of these weird interactions. Brett knows those interactions.
So Graph Digger's Cage, I'll read out the text of it. Creature cards in graveyards and libraries can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. So Birthing Ritual, it does say you look at the top 7 cards of your library. So those cards are in your library. Then you put a creature from among a card in your library into play. So Graph Digger's Cage should prevent that from happening.
And it's a nice way to slow up what Eduardo's doing in his proactive game plan, but at the end of the day, Brett's gonna make something happen soon. Even in the face of this Graph Digger's Cage, Eduardo's got a lot of powerful cards.
I see a green card in his hand, and I'm pretty
sure.
Oh,
that's got to be, yeah.
It is a
Force of Vigor. I was gonna be happy to see that one.
Wow. I wonder how patient he will be with it because there's no second target right away, and if he doesn't have the Birthing Ritual, he won't, slam it out.
Speaking of second target, that is what Brett could think is probably the best draw. Oh, interesting. Really patient.
No second green card, perhaps?
Yeah, it's got to be no second green card. Otherwise it's. But that's
or green card. Draw. Looks like 2 green cards in hand now. A card that was green was drawn for turn, so either it's a forest, Boseiju, or an actual green card.
Yeah, I doubt it's a land because
no, I don't think so.
Looks like there's passing back. Really interesting play, and that's it. Now you've got yourself another good target.
Oh wow, yeah, Brett will get 1 drone out of it, but Eduardo is sitting on these 2 mystical disputes that haven't been doing very much all game. So honestly, I could see him. Oh, this is in response, going after the Springleaf Drum. And he's saying, sure, I'm going to dispute this Kappa. Not Kappa, sorry, Pinnacle Emissary. And I just want to make sure I hit that Springleaf Drum also.
Yeah, and it does look like his patience is going to be somewhat rewarded. As Brett is sitting doing very little, but at the end of the day, Eduardo doesn't have a ton going on either. So there is some level of just a race to draw. That looks like an Oculus. But the graveyard was exiled.
Oh, well, Oculus is probably what he'll need eventually, but this is super smart from Eduardo. So he starts with the Force of Vigor. I was like, why didn't you just dispute the Kappa and then do the thing? Just because then the Metallic Rebuke could hit his Force of Vigor. And so he want to ensure that his Force of Vigor resolves by starting with Force of Vigor. If there's a Rebuke, then he's more interested in disputing the Rebuke than encountering the Pinnacle Emissary. So yeah, now that play makes sense to me.
That is an excellent play. What is not an excellent play is Eduardo's a Flare of Denial and 3 basic forests in hand, which is not the best combination, but that is an excellent draw. The Shardless Agent into the Shardless Agent
into Codal, wow. And you said that last card was Flare?
I believe it's Flare of Denial, and there's an important Oculus, but the graveyard was Tormod's Cryptid away, so there's not much. And now we're thinking this has got to be the turn. Brett needs something. And that was about as far from something as you can have, which is Spire Bluff Canal on turn 4, is
Shadow Spear
effectively
not
nothing.
likely to eat the flare.
With how patient Eduardo's been, you've got to imagine it's
He,
unlikely.
he did think about it. He did think about it, but ultimately it resolves. We're back to Eduardo's turn. He's got a blue source now. So Flare and Oculus in hand. The Oculus is very far away, but he's in a good.
That's a surprising card to see, which in this matchup, which I would not think is where you want to be, but Brett has brought in Ashiok.
Wow, I mean, yeah. I don't know.
It eats
It's
the
honestly,
graveyard.
it might eat a counterspell here.
Yeah, with the Oculus in hand, you'd think just you want to,
Yeah,
but
you have to, and you have no path to attacking this Ashiok. Well, you
but
do, but he
there's
lets it resolve. Yeah, he does have a
and
he can attack with both creatures, and then Ashiok will take one.
yeah, you have a. I think the way that how incredibly uh just like patient that Eduardo's played these games, you felt like he's not giving up his counter spells easy and
Yeah,
countering the
absolutely.
Ashiok there, a card that really, yeah, it's on the board and it eats the graveyard, but it's not doing much. It has very limited text. It's a
Well,
Tormod's Crypt.
that is true, but it might be more like if Eduardo's way of winning the game, not disagreeing. I think the patience, of course, is warranted here. Um, Especially with the Kappa coming down, you wouldn't want to waste a flare. Although this one will eat a mystical dispute. And uh, but what? No, not what he's doing, dude. Sorry. Um, the if Eduardo's way of winning the game is with a Port Oculus, which is, of course is one of the cards his deck is built around, and which mills you two every turn, and Ashiok mills a lot of cards out of his deck, I could see a scenario where he gets pretty low on deck because the endurance is probably boarded out. Although I think we are very unlikely to hit that scenario, um, given that the Ashiok will only be able to mill a total of 12 cards. So
Yeah,
really,
you'd need maybe a second Ashiok to get into the mix
yeah.
to involve this, but without that, it does seem like a tough ask. And as the Ashiok ticks to 1,
And Eduardo realizing that he doesn't think that Brett will actually trade the Ornithopter for the Ice Fang, or that if he does, he's okay with that, and not choosing not to give Brett the one free life and leave the Shardless Agent back. So that's hard to realize also.
yeah, it's just again like this match has been showing the importance of patience when you're in these good spots, and Eduardo's been incredibly patient. And now when the real threats hit the stack, like this Pinnacle Emissary, he's just flush with answers because he didn't feel the need to rush out the Force of Vigor, didn't feel the need to rush out any of these counter spells, and now is more than happy to counter the really impactful cards that can change the game. Now they just have no chance of resolving.
The Ashiok not using it, not sacrificing itself to mill another 4, it's gonna stay on 1 to force it to be attacked for one more turn.
Yeah, there's only
Well,
one more card in the graveyard for Eduardo that you could eat. Eduardo's maybe making sure there's enough win cons left in the deck so bad things don't happen. But
still does
with
have
this
the Oculus
Ashiok
in
getting off
hand.
the board, it's looking really really tough for Brett in what we thought was a great matchup.
Yeah, it, yeah, it's been impressive play to navigate to the spot. There we go,
And
another
there's
banger.
yeah
But the thing is, this one resolves now, so we counter, and then finally one gets through, and that one is definitely more powerful than anything Eduardo has on board at the moment.
But Eduardo's not too many cards off. Gets us, I guess no more surveil lands, but must have been one maybe eaten
Hit
by
by the
the
Ashiok, yeah.
yeah. but you get a
Otherwise,
couple
you'd be
trades, you get a counter spell. Like it's not taking too long for this Oculus. You could even start throwing off sink into supers.
Yeah, that is one way. If the Ravager ever threatens to become good and you do have the sink, you can set it back down to 0. But another, well, not quite a banger at this stage of the game from Brett, but honestly, still probably good enough.
It's
Yeah, it's gonna do something.
not too bad.
It's
The
good. Yeah,
problem
I
is
take it back.
it's probably gonna get you'd expect some countering to get like you just sink the weapons manufacturing back to hand so they don't make a munitions token is
Exactly.
probably what I'm looking at. So it's not at the end of the day, Eduardo's drawn very poorly in these last few turns, and he's probably happy to just have a reason to cast a sink into stupor.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get them out of his hand.
Enters on 2, so that explosive's threatening both the Codal and the Ravager. A little
Not
shaky
exactly the trade you're looking for in Brett Steele's spot, but the game continues. There are chances for some things you're gonna guess. We'll see maybe another artifact drawn in the same kind of play before.
There's the
With Sink into Stupor targets the weapons manufacturing again, but Eduardo is kind of bricked out to the point where Brett has some chances here.
Absolutely. And we do see the sink. The clause resolves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 artifacts on board. I don't know, but Eduardo's up to 4 cards in his graveyard. He needs to draw. Wow.
That's what you need.
Oh, that's
a
a Shardless
powerful card.
Okay, that's good for Eduardo for sure. I saw green and I thought it was a Force of Vigor, although he wouldn't have fired that one off right away. You would say
so aggressively.
Yeah.
But you do see, Dismember hit off the. It's not really doing too much here.
No.
If Brett can start chaining some artifacts together,
I mean, Dismember is
maybe
going
there's things that can happen.
It's card 5.
Yeah.
I mean, Dismember in response on this Archbound Ravager forces a lot of artifacts to be sacrificed right now.
Yeah, you probably have to just let it go. I would assume.
What do you mean, let it go?
Let the Ravager go, given the Dismember. But maybe you.
Sorry, because Brett still has the Claws of Gix that he drew last turn, and so even with the Ravager off the table, he will still be able to sacrifice the munitions token at will.
Yeah, and Eduardo's got a bunch of mopey creatures. If Brett can chain, really it's just one Pinnacle Emissary is feels like enough to put him in possibly the driver's seat. Gets to put a counter on this sizable Ornithopter. Maybe we counted out Brett Steele too early here. This game has got some more play to it.
Absolutely. 5 cards in graveyard. At what point do we start sending some creatures just to try and get them down?
The answer is looks like a Force of Vigor.
Well, now that is no longer necessary. That is what we wanted to see.
And that may change Brett's tune here. Maybe go after the Ornithopter.
It really is.
Maybe Shadow Spear.
You've been like commentators cursing these players. Like,
yeah, I need to stop talking. I need to just say, just let it happen, because I've been proven wrong about 100 times in a row. Every time I think someone has a chance, they immediately go to in what looks like a completely brutal spot. And now you see, like, whenever someone's playing the Simic Birthing Ritual deck and they pick up 3 creatures and get into the red zone, not a great spot for Brett. And now you gotta think again, with no thought cast in the deck. What do the powerful top decks that get you back in with no board look like?
I mean, it's purely Kappa Cannoneer at this point for Brett. Urza Saga maybe, but that one probably too slow. Kappa Cannoneer also may be too slow. Passing the turn is not going to do it.
Passing the turn is definitely too slow, and Eduardo had some tough decisions that took some time earlier in this match, but this is definitely not one of them, and those creatures are getting in the red zone immediately.
Oh, he's moving fast now. He can sense it.
And, this Eduardo looks to be going to be the lone truly undefeated player. No draws, 8-0. You know, Eduardo's another one of those names we talk about at the top of the standings all the time. And Eduardo, for a player who's really known for his limited prowess and being one of the best, really one of the best limited minds in the kind of modern era of the game in terms of what he can do in terms of innovating teams' approach to limited. He is looking excellent and constructed here right now.
Yeah, if I'm correct, think right, he's already qualified for this upcoming Pro Tour. So just playing for fun and crushing.
Yeah, this
And
is
money
all
and world.
gravy.
So there's a lot to be winning at this RC. Not to take that away. There's a lot up for grabs for even the qualified players. But yeah, he's one who's already earned it and is looking to get even more.
Yeah, it's looking fantastic for Eduardo here, and yeah, I believe Eduardo had a qualification for the last one deferred to the subsequent event.
Yeah, for off of the mocks.
That looks like that's things are good when you fetch and immediately go to shuffle your library because you don't care about the card in your deck and just cast the Oculus. That's nice. That's efficient.
Yeah. There we go. And Eduardo takes it down 2-0 against the deck we said might be the tough matchup for Simic Birthing Ritual. Improving to 8-0. One more round in the day, but as of right now, he's our lone undefeated player.